Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the January 20th, 2026 Port Washington Board of Education meeting. At this time, we will rise for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I will call on District Clerk to please take a roll call.
Adam Smith.
Here.
Julie Epstein. Here. Sandra Alvarez.
Here.
Deborah Brooks.
Here.
Rachel Gilliard.
Soon to be here.
Nanette Melkonian.
Here.
Jessica Melwani.
Here.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda. That's the January 20th, 2026 agenda. Do I have a second? Ms. Alvarez, all in favor? 6-0. The agenda is adopted. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to recess to executive session to discuss employment of particular persons. Do we have a second? Ms. Melwani, all in favor? 6-0. We're going to recess to executive session, and we will be back at approximately 7:30. Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to reconvene in public session. Do we have a second? Ms. Malwani, all in favor? 7-0. We are back in public session. Apologize for the tardiness. Can we please call on District Clerk to take a roll call?
Adam Smith.
Here.
Julie Epstein.
Here.
Sandra Alvarez.
Here.
Deborah Brooks.
Here.
Rachel Gilliard.
Here.
Nanette Melkonian.
Here.
Jessica Mawani.
Here.
Kaylin Costello.
Here.
Thank you very much. Welcome to tonight's meeting. Thank you for joining us and braving the cold here. I'll keep these remarks brief. As noted at our last meeting, we've officially entered budget season, and much of our discussion in the coming weeks and months will center on the development of the 26-27 budget. This is a fluid and iterative process, and while we explore a range of scenarios, it is important to remember that all discussions remain in draft form until the budget is formally adopted in April. Last week, the governor presented her state of the state, outlining key priorities that will inform the upcoming state budget. The initial highlights affecting school districts include a focus on supporting teachers as we transition through literacy instruction changes, transforming math instruction and learning outcomes, expanding the statewide longitudinal data system to better track student trajectories, investing in outdoor and climate-resilient playground spaces, strengthening mental health supports for students, creating true universal pre-kindergarten and increasing per-pupil funding, and lastly, safeguarding students in online environments. We look forward to further discussion of these proposals, how they may impact our district, and the release of state aid numbers in the weeks ahead, although I think we're starting to get that teased just moments ago. Yeah. In the meantime, we will continue to assess both the known and unknown factors influencing the budget and thoughtfully balance them all alongside all other elements of the budgeting process. There will be much more to discuss in the weeks to come. And with that, I will ask Dr. Posse to give the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I hope that everyone enjoyed the long weekend. I want to begin this evening by recognizing several recent accomplishments across the district. First, I'd like to congratulate senior Benjamin Moses, who was recently one of the top 300 scholars nationwide in the Regeneron Science Talent Search for his research on depression and anxiety amongst young cancer survivors. This is an extraordinary achievement that reflects both Benjamin's dedication and the strength of our science research program. I also want to recognize his teacher, Tina Gallagher, whose guidance and expertise support this level of scholarship among our students. At Weber Middle School, student teams competed in the Blue Dragon Science Olympiad Invitational and earned 10 medals across multiple disciplines. Their success reflects strong preparation, collaboration, and problem solving, as well as the thoughtful instructional work of their teachers. So congratulations to our Weber Middle School students and their teachers. In the arts, we continue to see exceptional participation and achievement. A record 133 students were selected for the Nassau Music Educators Association All-County Music Festival, and 39 students across the district were chosen for the All-County Art Exhibition. Congratulations again to our students and their teachers. I also want to recognize our district administrators for representing Port Washington at recent regional leadership conferences. Beth Javelin, Jessica Zuckerman, Dr. Mays, Dr. Ferrante presented our portrait of an 8th grader at a regional middle school conference. Dr. Baer and Dr. Feeney presented on the thoughtful use of artificial intelligence in school leadership at the Principal's Day of Learning. In athletics, Nick Schrottweiser was selected as the Section 8 nominee for the New York State Athletic Administrators Association Judith Ann Knight Positive Change Award, recognizing his leadership and commitment to student-centered athletics. I want to congratulate our administrators and underscore the importance of these recognitions because they reflect the quality of leadership in this district and reinforce Port Washington's role as a leader in the field. I share these examples to provide context for the work before us this evening. Tonight, we'll be continuing discussions about the formation of the 26-27 budget. Tonight's discussion centers on factors that are shaping the development of the budget. Consistent with our budget calendar, each board meeting between the December program enhancements presentation and the preliminary budget presentation scheduled for March 10th is designed to identify priorities and weigh key considerations. Several important data points are still being reviewed, which is why this process extends into March before we have a clearer picture of where we will ultimately land. Tonight, we'll review key cost drivers and known information that will shape the budget landscape. As I did last month, I want to reiterate that it is still early in the process and decisions will continue to evolve as additional information becomes available. Throughout this work, we remain committed to moving forward thoughtfully and responsibly. I also want to flag one additional item on tonight's agenda, the adoption of the 26-27 school calendar. The proposed calendar sets the first day of school for students on September 2nd and the final day on June 25th. I'd like to thank the Port Washington Teachers Association and the Administrators and Principals Supervisor Association for their collaboration and partnership in developing the proposed calendar. As the board considers the items before us, I also want to underscore the importance of community input. Our climate and culture survey remains open through January 21st on Thought Exchange, and the feedback we receive plays an important role in informing our decisions moving forward. Tonight we have two assistant superintendent updates. I'd like to start with our deputy superintendent, Dr. Shields, to give the enrollment report.
Good evening and thank you. Our enrollment report was last calculated on January 16th. At that time, in kindergarten through 12th grade, we had 5,088 students. A reminder to the board that this past year we graduated 451 students and we brought in 356 kindergartners. So of that 178 decrease in students, about 100 of it was due to just the change of who exited and who arrived. So more to come on enrollment in the future. Thank you.
Great. And I think Dr. Allen is going to speak now on an MTSS initiative update.
Thank you. As you know, we've launched a multi-year initiative in partnership with Catalyst Education to implement a comprehensive multi-tiered system of supports. This initiative is designed to strengthen our instructional support teams through data-driven, collaborative problem solving to better address students' academic and social-emotional needs. Since my November update, the consultants have conducted on-site planning and coaching sessions at our 5 elementary schools on December 3rd and December 12th. On the 3rd, our consultants met with the principals and school psychologists to strategically map out the coaching process. On the 12th, the consultants held 2-hour in-person sessions with each building's core IST to define their purpose and establish a long-term vision. Last week, Dr. Feeney and I debriefed with our lead consultant to plan our February meeting with the elementary principals, which will focus specifically on Tier 1 supports. Looking ahead, two sessions have been scheduled for March, which will focus on implementing IST changes for the upcoming school year. We are also beginning to outline our year 2 of the rollout, which will expand our focus to include Weber and Schreiber. We look forward to continuing this important work to ensure the success of all our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. And I'm sorry, one correction before I misspoke and said Tina Gallagher was the science research teacher. She's the math research teacher. Congratulations to Ms. Gallagher.
Do you want to go ahead with the ex officio student, or is there another superintendent?
Yes, please. And now our student rep.
Good evening. With semester 1 wrapping up and Schreiber currently in midterm week, we're now halfway through the school year. Weber and Schreiber students are beginning to look ahead to semester 2 and are excited for the upcoming changes to their schedules. Dr. Bear and I are waiting to move forward with the grading policy survey I introduced during the last board meeting until after the board finalizes the grading policy changes. This will allow us to ensure the survey accurately reflects the finalized policy and provides meaningful feedback from students. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we're going to move to community comments. I have the names signed in. If you wish to speak and you haven't signed in, just come at the end, starting with, and I hope I pronounced the name correctly, Bina Shadari. Someone's going to just come down and make sure that's on, or come up. Just 1 second.
Hi, my name is Ms. Chowdhury. I'm here to address some information I learned about perhaps getting rid of the Latin curriculum in this district. Is this the appropriate place to discuss it?
You can speak to the board about any topic that's not about an individual student or staff member. May not be the best place to talk about academic programming, but we won't engage with you here directly.
Okay, thank you. Well, my comments would be, having studied Latin myself, having 2 kids graduate from this amazing district and go on to study classics at prestigious universities, and all of us loving the study of vernacular and Greek and Roman history, I urge you, do not cripple this district by removing the study of Latin and the humanities in this very competitive North Shore of Long Island environment. It is the study of classics that, in addition to their other achievements, that helped really distinguish their applications in the admission process. Are you trying to reduce college acceptances to top universities? In addition, the study of Latin, a non-Romance but not dead language, offers special learners with speech or auditory processing issues like myself, my son, an opportunity to learn a language comfortably without the pressure or the fear of having to speak up in class, allowing them to continue to feel comfortable and build confidence while learning so much about our language through the depth of the Latin language. And finally, there may be some thoughts to cut Latin because of lower enrollments that have been noted from past times. I would say districts are still recovering from COVID at this point, and I think enrollment doesn't currently reflect what the need currently is. I think enrollment will continue to increase in the upcoming years, especially if parents are made aware of the beauty of the language and the benefits of learning this language. Thank you.
So before I call the next person, just our practice is not to engage with community comments in real time, but I am gonna, Dr. Posse does want to just set the record straight regarding this topic in case we have further speakers on it.
Yes, thank you very much for your comments. I do just want to provide some important context. We do have a retirement in the Latin department at the middle school. Latin is a hard-to-fill specialized position. We are working to make sure that the students who are currently enrolled in the Latin pipeline are able to complete their studies. And that is our first priority, is to make sure that those that are currently taking Latin in grade 6 can continue through their senior year should they choose to continue the language. We are planning to take a pause to consider what the additional language option would make the most sense for Weber for incoming 6th graders. Latin will be part of that conversation. But right now, our priority is to make sure that we can meet the needs of the kids that are currently in the pipeline so that they can finish the study that they started in Latin.
Thank you, Dr. Posse. With that, we're going to move on to our next speaker, which is a combination. We have Isabella Ertel and Charlie Paredes.
Hi, I'm Charlie Paredes.
I'm Bella Ertel, and we're the co-presidents of Latin Club.
We want to talk about integral part of Schreiber's, which is the Latin program.
We've been told many times that Latin seems like just an old dead language, but in reality, in our personal current experience, it's one of the most meaningful and useful classes that our school offers. Latin is not just for students who love history, but for anybody who wants to become a stronger thinker, reader, and learner.
One of the greatest benefits of Latin is how much it strengthens one's understanding of English. A huge percentage of English words come from Latin. When you study Latin, you learn how words are built. That makes reading harder texts, writing better essays, and understanding complex material in every subject much easier.
We've noticed that Latin also trains our brains in a different way. When we translate a Latin sentence, we're taught to analyze structure, think logically, and pay close attention to detail. Those skills have helped us in math, science, history, and pretty much every other subject.
And as for learning another language, Latin gives you a huge head start. Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian all come from Latin. Even in science and medicine, the technical language is almost all based on Latin roots.
For us, Latin isn't just about academics. We've noticed that it connects us to the foundations of our own history, government, literature, and philosophy. When we read Latin, we learn so much of where our culture, our ideas, and our systems come from.
There's something unique about the Latin program at Schreiber, how it creates a real community. Whether it's through Latin Club or being in tight-knit classes together, students can build friendships and a shared sense of pride. It's one of those programs that make our school feel unique.
Latin is also a real advantage when it comes to college admissions and standardized tests. Colleges look for students who challenge themselves, and Latin is widely recognized as a rigorous academic subject. It's a differentiator from an admissions standpoint. On top of that, because so much of the SAT and ACT depends on vocabulary and reading comprehension, students who study Latin often have a natural advantage. Understanding Latin roots makes it easier to figure out unfamiliar words and complex passages, which directly improve test performance. And in my experience, I think that a lot of the reason why I got into my dream university this year was because of Latin and the strong bond that I was able to form with our teacher, Miss Griffin, by having her over the course of all 4 years at Schreiber.
Keeping Latin is about investing in students' futures, their skills, education, and their growth as thinkers.
Latin has made us better readers, better writers, and better problem solvers, as well as better learners. That's not something we should be cutting, but something we should be proud of.
We hope you'll choose to protect the Latin program at both the middle school and high school level for the students who come after us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Michelle Sals.
Good evening. It's my understanding that if I pose questions, they're not going to be answered tonight, but they will be addressed at the next meeting, right? Okay. So given what's been going on in the country and the news and the current events, there's a lot of fear and anxiety happening in our community, specifically what's happening in Minnesota and Minneapolis. One of the tragic things that is happening there to families is kids are not being sent to school because the families are afraid that there's going to be a separation. So I was wondering and hoping that the district has a plan that in case a similar situation occurs here to that's occurring in Minneapolis, if the school district has a plan to offer virtual schooling to the children of these vulnerable families so that they don't miss out on their education, because they do have a right to an equal education in this state. So I'm hoping that if it's not a thought now, that there is a plan that can be crafted to help these vulnerable families if attendance from the children goes down. I think one of the important parts of that plan would be to appoint somebody from the school to be a community liaison with vulnerable families, somebody who is bilingual, perhaps, to be able to see what the community's needs are if a situation happens like that happening in Minnesota. So that's both my question and my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional speakers? No? Okay. Thank you to everyone who spoke. We're going to close community comments at this time. Move on to our discussion item. Ms. Manuel is going to be starting presenting our budget work session number 1. I guess it's kind of number 2 also, depending on how you look at it. So,
Thank
ahead.
you. We're going to do this one together. So good evening again. As I stated in my report, tonight begins a series of conversations with the board focused on how we align our resources to our priorities in a thoughtful, disciplined, and forward-looking way. We'll build a shared understanding of where the district is headed, the pressures and opportunities shaping our financial landscape, and the strategic lens that'll guide our work as we develop the 26-27 budget for the year ahead. So I want to begin by situating tonight's discussion within the broader budget development process. Since the fall, we've engaged in a deliberate sequence of work. We've reviewed student performance data at both the elementary and secondary levels. We've explored programmatic enhancements under consideration. We've begun conversations about long-term facilities planning. And for any member of the community that's watching this, all of those previous presentations are linked to this slide, which will be posted on the website. As we've noted at each stage, at this point in the process, it's still too early to tell what the 26-27 budget will accommodate. Tonight's purpose is to examine the factors influencing the budget and to begin framing the pressures, opportunities, and strategic considerations that'll shape our decisions moving forward. Every step of the budget development process is focused on the district's vision for students. The portrait of a graduate defines the knowledge, skills, and dispositions we want students to leave our system with so that they are prepared to thrive in a complex and changing world. It provides the North Star for our instructional, operational, and financial decisions. Our district priority areas translate that vision into action. They guide our work across academics, professional learning, student well-being, partnerships, and operations. The budget is one of the most powerful tools we have to give life to those priorities in a coherent and intentional way. This framework reflects how we're approaching the budget this year. Students are intentionally placed at the center. Surrounding them are 3 interconnected areas: academic and personal excellence, a culture of care, belonging, and well-being, and efficient operations and future-ready facilities. Around those core areas are focus areas that have shaped our work all year. We are strengthening coherent and consistent academic programs across schools and grade levels. We're deepening our use of data and reflection to improve teaching and learning. We're building a shared understanding of a multi-tiered system of supports so students receive the right level of academic and social-emotional support at the right time. We're also taking a long-range strategic approach to facilities and operations to ensure sustainability and readiness for the future. These areas are deeply connected. Strong academic outcomes depend on effective systems of care. Meaningful improvement depends on reflection and data-informed decision-making. Long-term operational planning creates the conditions that allow all of this work to thrive. Our goal is to align resources across these areas so the work already underway continues to move the district forward in a coherent and sustainable way. These budget priorities flow directly from the framework you just saw. As we move through the process, we will weigh how best to maintain class sizes that support strong relationships and effective instruction. We'll consider how to strengthen and expand academic programs in ways that are meaningful for students and sustainable for the district. We'll examine how to invest in professional learning that has the greatest impact on teaching and learning. We will evaluate how to maintain and improve facilities so they remain safe, functional, and aligned with long-term needs. We will ensure students receive the right support at the right time, and we'll use clear, consistent information to understand student learning and growth and assess the impact of our decisions. Taken together, these priorities help discipline our work. They keep us aligned to our values and focus our attention on long-term outcomes for students. There are several structural factors that shape the budget. Student enrollment influences staffing levels, and staffing levels in turn influence the instructional and extracurricular programs we're able to offer. Contractual obligations related to compensation and benefits represent a significant portion of our expenditures. Infrastructure, transportation, and instructional technology require sustained investment. Understanding these drivers helps us ground our decisions in reality while keeping them focused on fulfilling our goals. So student enrollment and staffing are closely connected. Over the past decade, gradual changes in enrollment have provided the district with flexibility to strategically adjust staffing, reduce class size, expand course offerings, and strengthen our ICT program for students with disabilities. Looking ahead, enrollment for next year is projected to remain relatively stable compared to this year. With that context, I'm going to turn to Ms. Manuel, who will walk us through the fiscal factors that define the parameters within the 26-27 budget. Ms. Manuel.
Thank you, Dr. Passing. So just to recap, the 25-26 budget represented $199,728. This was approved by over 77% of our voters, and it represented a 2.2% increase from budget to budget, or $4.4 million. This tax levy increase was 3.39%, and it was tax compliant, meaning it was below the allowable tax levy limit. It was fiscally responsible to our community. It maintains and enhances curricular and non-curricular programming. It aligns with the board and district goals, and it also ensures that staffing levels meet the needs of all of our students. So looking at our budget for 26-27, we'll be considering several factors. We have some positive factors, challenges, opportunities, and also some unknowns at this time. Some of the positives, we've had several retirements from our teacher unit this year. We've had about 17 so far, and that represents a savings of $1.5 million. Just between hiring new staff, replacing the more senior teachers. The total increase in salaries for a rollover budget is estimated to increase about 1.96%. The TRS rate is also, which is our retirement system, that's estimated to decrease 0.84 percentage points, which is going from 9.59% to about 8.75%, which is also a positive for the district. So we've also received the tax-based growth factor. Late last week, we received that. This is the actual increase that the Office of Real Property provides to the district. This is, each district has an estimate of the real brick and mortar that's going on in a school district. So it's saying basically we are growing by 0.0085. This is good for the district. It'll increase our tax levy from last year about 1.5 million. So that's saying it's allowed for us to do that before the 2% tax cap. One of the major challenges in this budget is the health insurance premium increase. That's about 9% for the 2026 school year. We're also seeing an increase in the ERS contribution rate, so that's employee retirement system. So some of the opportunities that we continue to look at are in-house efficiencies. How can we do things in the district instead of contractually doing services outside of it? We're constantly looking for grant funding and also advocacy. So some of the unknowns at the time of the presentation were the state aid estimates. We have received today around 2 o'clock, we received the state aid estimates. I do still have to analyze them, but it does look positive for us. Foundation aid was only an increase of 1%, which is a little discouraging. We thought it would be 2 or 3%. But the expense-based aids, the district has seen an increase in those aids, which is encouraging. There was also an increase in the pre-K funding. So we still have to tease out what all of this means, and but it does look positive, which is very encouraging. So this map provides the expenditures of our budget. So school districts are required to present budgets in a three-part format. You have the capital, the program, which is our students and what it takes to educate the students, as well as administrative. This budget actually breaks the budget down by object codes. So you'll see things like BOCES, contractual expenses, our transportation and debt service. You'll also notice salaries are 47% of our budget, and benefits for those salaries are about 26%. This is common with most districts. That accounts for about 75% of our budget. So this is useful because you can see that it's a small portion that is not really 75% is total compensation for our employees, which isn't always controllable. We've worked very hard in negotiating with our collective bargaining units to really keep salaries contained. However, the benefits, when you have health insurance increasing by 9%, that creates a challenge for all school districts. This is also helpful to look at our revenue. You can see that our property taxes represent 84% of our total revenue. So as most people are aware, your revenue and your expenditure budget have to be equal. So our state aid is 9%, almost 10%. So in total, we have about 93% of our budget is coming from the property tax and the state aid, which creates a challenge when you have other things increasing by 9% and you have only limited resources in the tax cap. It creates a challenge for sure. Another thing we thought would be helpful is to discuss the levy-to-levy increase, and this provides an historical perspective, starting from 2015-16 to the 25-26. You can see the average levy increase is 2.35%. You can also see the budget-to-budget increase. This shows the total dollar amount, and this next one shows the percentage of increase, with the average budget increase of 3%. This next slide provides the total expenditures for school districts in Nassau County. These are for K through 12 districts. And you can see about 41 school districts. Port Washington is more than 10% under the average of all the Nassau schools. So this is really just to show that we have tried to contain costs, but we also, there's a lot of different factors involved at play. This chart shows the volatility of the health insurance rates, and you can see the increases from year to year. Sometimes it could be an increase of 1%, 5%, 14%, 9%. So the reason we show this is to see the volatility in trying to plan for the long term. And this dramatically shows you the increase in the total annual premium for families. So you can see in 2015 it was $21,700. Now we're looking at $43,965. So that's more than doubled. So where it's a challenge for the district, it's also a challenge for our employees as well, because it's affecting all of us.
Thank you, Ms. Manuel, for that important financial context. The next set of slides focuses on how we are positioning the district instructionally with an emphasis on coherence, continuous improvement, and long-term growth. These instructional priorities reflect the work we believe will have the greatest long-term impact on student learning and build on initiatives already underway across the district. First, strengthening core foundations and support. Literacy and mathematics are foundational to everything else students do. This work focuses on deepening implementation of our elementary mathematics program and supporting the instructional shifts in literacy as we prepare to adopt a new evidence-based research reading program. It also includes strengthening systems to identify and support students' academic and emotional needs. Second, curricular consistency and coherence. Students should experience clear and aligned expectations as they move across grade levels and schools. Shared curriculum, aligned assessments, and common approaches to using data to inform instruction reduces variability, supports teacher collaboration, and promotes equity of experience for students. Third, building teacher capacity through professional learning. Sustained improvement depends on people. This priority emphasizes job-embedded professional learning that supports instructional shifts and curricular implementation over time, with the goal of building internal expertise year after year. Finally, expanding academic pathways. We continue to examine how to create clearer, more accessible pathways for students, particularly in secondary mathematics, while ensuring those pathways are coherent, well-supported, and aligned with readiness. Taken together, these priorities reflect a shift from isolated initiatives to stronger instructional systems. The initiatives on this slide represent the areas that are under active consideration as we align resources to the instructional priorities we just saw on the previous slide. We are considering the expansion of instructional coaching roles to strengthen curricular implementation and provide sustained job-embedded support for teachers. These teaching positions are intended to build coherence across classrooms and schools. We're also considering the creation of a director of mathematics position to provide district-wide leadership and oversight of the mathematics program from pre-K through grade 12, supporting long-term coherence and alignment. At the center of the slide are proposed new course offerings, including a humanities-focused advanced placement opportunity for 9th grade students and courses aligned to student interests and emerging workforce trends. These reflect our commitment to expanding access, relevance, and opportunity. Finally, we continue to prioritize professional learning to ensure instructional improvements are well supported and lasting. The initiatives under consideration in the area of efficient operations and future-ready facilities are outlined here. We are considering a $4.4 million transfer to capital to support 3 significant projects: flooring abatement at Guggenheim, the retaining wall at Manor Haven, and roof and masonry and HVAC improvements at Daly. These investments are focused on risk mitigation, sustainability, and extending the useful life of our facilities. We're also considering replacing a 20-year-old 22 passenger bus and to purchase an electric vehicle to offset the cost of a private placement transportation run, as well as renewing technology leases to support instruction. So as we continue this work, the lens we've discussed tonight will guide our decisions. We'll focus on strengthening systems, aligning resources to what matters most for students, and making choices that balance immediate needs and long-term outcomes. This evening marks one step in a broader, deliberate process. Our next presentation will take place on February 10th, where we will review the rollover budget and the tax cap. On March 10th, we'll present a preliminary budget for the board's consideration. We'll then hold a budget workshop on March 24th, adopt the budget on April 14th, conduct a public budget hearing on May 5th, and conclude with the budget vote on May 19th. Throughout this process, we're looking forward to continuing to shape a budget that reflects our shared values and our collective responsibility to the students and community we serve. And Ms. Manuel and I are happy to take any questions from the board.
Thank you very much, Dr. Posse. I personally felt that was a pretty straightforward presentation, so I'm guessing there's not going to be too much in terms of questions or comments, but I do want to open it up, as you said, so we can start at this end. Does anyone on this side have questions? Ms. Alvarez.
Thank you. Thank you for the thorough report. So I do have a question and one comment. So one question, I brought it up at the last board meeting, was the enrollment projections. So last meeting I said I might bring it up at budget. I did not bring it at budget. We had a different conversation going on at budget. I will bring it up tonight though. because it was referenced in this presentation with enrollment. So the last enrollment the demographic report we had was in November 2023. And some of the projections, so I was looking at the report when I made the comment, but I have reviewed it again. One of the questions, is that the entire report? Was that the entire report? Is there a fuller detailed report than what was shared, Ms. Epstein? Okay, so that report was very, it had two different numbers on projections. So it had one slide that in 2027, so the numbers are a little, the presentation, yeah. That's what you shared with me? Yep. So the report stated that we would be a little bit under 5,000 for next year as far as enrollment, whereas our projections here are a little bit above 5,000. So my ask is, at what point are we requesting a new demographer report be done, and what that looks like? And if the district is already doing that just internally, what are you using for those projections? If that can be shared, I don't need the information now, but I do think it's important. The original discussion last meeting was about the future potential bond, if such a word is used. But this seems that it is a driver for a lot of decisions. You mentioned the class size and just, continuing that. So I'm just wondering when we get an updated demographer report.
I think that a lot of the demographer report work was done and those conversations happened in the budget committee a couple of years ago. Do you want to just, Ms. Epstein, just take that up at your next meeting? And maybe that you could deep dive into that, because I think Ms. Alvarez is going to would like that answer. Okay.
One thing.
If the board and the district think it's a valuable report to do, it's not just Ms. Alvarez.
But I think you want the answer to the question, and I think that would be the best forum to answer it so they can have a chance to, because that was where that discussion has always happened in the past, is in the budget committee. Ms. Gilliar.
I don't want to step on Julie's toes, so she can jump in if she wants, but I just wanted to add that I think that my understanding of the demographer's report is they're using a lot of data to project into the future, right? Home sales, the economy, many, many, many pieces of information, but it's a forecasting provision. And I think that it's sort of akin to watching the weather report versus living through the weather. And so it's a good guess into the future, but if we know we're sitting in a school district where we're at 5178, we can make a really good guess out of on all of those grades except kindergarten, because most of the kids move up and we have a sense of like how much attrition we tend to have. That's my guess. So I just thought it would be useful, and Julie, feel free to jump in, to I'm happy to have the budget committee discuss it in depth, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave this hanging out here, that the sense that this number might be dramatically wrong, because I don't think it is.
You are correct. I mean, the numbers we received also had a plus or minus either 2 or 4% range. So your example of how you described it is accurate. Historically speaking, we as a board had requested this because the demographer's report, I think, had not been done for 10 years, and there had been a lot of growth and change. And go ahead, Kathy.
If I could just add to that, Jessica Mack, every year she looks at our demography, and she has different, she looks at live births, she looks at lots of different factors, and she actually speaks with Dr. Shields about things as well. So the demographer's report that BOCE's provided was similar to some of the projections that she has.
If I could just add to that, one of the things that we did in terms of projected enrollment for the 26-27 budget process is that we did look at our live birth analysis. We did look back historically over the last 3 and 5 years to see how accurate our live birth analysis was at predicting kindergarten enrollment. We also looked at cohort trends in terms of how many kids moved in and out of the district over the last 3 to 5 years to build in that cohort change that typically happens into our projected enrollment. So that was an internal study that was completed using our own historical data points. So we have confidence in the 26-27 projected enrollment for the purposes of this budget presentation.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I will bring it up at budget, just a little bit more detailed question then. And I know that this is a very thorough report, presentation, and it's a working session, and there's many sessions to come. For me, one of the things that I have attempted to bring up at some of our curriculum meetings, maybe budget meeting, I'm not sure, but it is the number one thing I understand that we really do for our students is curriculum. I do understand that. That is a very priority for all of our students. It is what public education is for. I think in this day and age, as we see as our board goals were listed here, there's more to than just curriculum as far as a whole child approach. So I am patiently waiting to see when those conversations kind of occur, to kind of see where do we get into the other aspects of our district priorities, which are our priorities for this year. So culture of care, partnerships that empower. We had a community comment today about a community liaison position. It's not the first time that has been brought up. I believe that position role had been abolished in 2015. I could be wrong, but I actually, so the only reason I know Ms. Epstein is because it was the first time that I ever spoke at a board meeting was that year when that position was getting removed for that very important representative that we had working in this district. That was even before I had children, is I did make a comment a long time ago about the importance of that relationship. So I will patiently wait still of where these discussions are had of whole child and mental health and what we are doing, where that fits in these priorities. And again, I'm very much appreciative of these priorities that are listed. I would like to see a full picture as we continue these discussions. Thank you.
Anyone else on this side have questions or comments? If not, well, Ms. Gilliar.
It may not be a question for right now, but on the transfer of capital, at some point, I'm assuming we are going to hear a little more information about the renewal of the technology leases. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I personally think that we should have a more detailed conversation about the technology leases if we're talking about Chromebooks and iPads and really dig into, we got some updates from technology in the last year.
We're expecting something in the packet on that, so maybe I would suggest reviewing it, and then based on tracker feedback, we can determine if it's something that would warrant like a full public presentation, see if that satisfies you.
That sounds good.
Okay.
I mean, I don't even think to my mind, I don't necessarily need it to be a full public presentation, because I think we've had presentations in very recent years on technology, instructional technology, and infrastructure. I think it's more, to my mind, a philosophical conversation that the board and the administration should be having, because it's a significant investment. And I think that it's time now, we're far enough past 2020 to sort of evaluate what we're investing in and what we're getting out of it, and if we are spending that money the right way and supplying what we want to be supplying.
I think it's a valid question. So let's make sure you take a note of what's in the packet, and then we'll kind of take it from there. Okay, sounds good. Ms. Malwani, I think you had a...
Yeah, it's just one question. Because we did have a very robust conversation about revenue at the last Budget and Facilities Committee meeting, and advocacy as well. But for purposes of this presentation tonight, I'm wondering, Ms. Manuel, can you just share with us where federal funding is captured in our revenue picture and what share of our revenue it accounts for? I know there's lots of concern in the community, in the country, about the state of federal funding, and I think it just may help inform that conversation to really understand what we're talking about in our revenue picture.
So with the revenue chart that I shared with you, there really is not much federal funding there, because what the voters are asked to approve is really our expenditures. And in the general fund, that's really supported by state revenue as well as the property taxes. Federal funds are put into a separate fund, like a special aid fund. So that was one of the challenges. We kind of talked about the uncertainty behind the federal funding, and if some of those grants were to decrease or not even exist, like some of the title grants. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. You were asking where does it come to play here? It really didn't.
Right, so what I'm understanding is that when we look at this pie on slide 12, it is not in this pie, it's in a separate bucket. But I think understanding for, the purposes of this meeting and this presentation, how much is in that bucket and what are we at risk of potentially losing, because that will inform our conversations about advocacy and perhaps even our priorities in terms of the budgeting, the budget development process.
Right. And so I believe what's being discussed is really the title grant funding. We do have IDEA grants as well, but the title funding, I have to get the exact numbers for you. I know we shared them at budget facilities. Is it about like 800,000, Julie?
So a couple of things. First, so right now between the House and the Senate bill, there's a discrepancy. The Senate bill fully funds the title programs. The House bill reduces funding to Title I, and it eliminates funding to Title II and III. So Title II really addresses professional learning. We this year in Title II spent $73,000 on professional learning in mathematics, and we spent $10,000 on professional learning in literacy. Title III funds are E&L related funds. The funding for that supports some of our summer enrichment, some of our after-school enrichment programs for our E&L learners. Certainly if that's about $109,000. So if either of those two title funds were eliminated, then if we wanted to continue any of those programs, we'd have to fund them through our general budget. With respect to Title I, that is a much larger grant, and there are some staff that are funded through Title I. We can get details on that. Of course, the staff that's funded through Title I are programs that are considered supplementary kind of programs. They're not allowed to supplant what is necessary to be funded through the general operating budget. But right now, as I said, until the House and the Senate reconcile on the federal level, reconcile their bills, we won't know what the federal funding picture looks like.
Thank you. And I know we will, at Budget and Facilities, we will be having further discussion about this topic.
Ms. Brooks, you said you don't have any questions, right?
I do.
Okay.
So thank you both for putting this together. I know it's something I could never do, so I appreciate the expertise involved behind all of this. Okay, so I'm just going to go slide by slide. Dr. Pazzi, you mentioned assessing the impact of our decisions. Are there any programs currently going on within the district that either need to be scrapped or revamped because they're just not working and they're not worth the money that we've put into them? Has there been analysis of that?
Our analysis has focused on the presentations that we've made with respect to elementary and secondary data. So you know that we're in the throes of adopting a new math curriculum at the elementary level. You know that we're investing in professional learning right now. at the elementary level with respect to math and to literacy, and we're preparing for the adoption of a new literacy program. We have no elementary or mathematics programs that are currently slated to be discontinued, although once we adopt a new reading program at the elementary level, we'll have a shift there, but we'll have a very public discussion about that. The Joint Committee of Teachers and Administrators is currently undertaking the work of reviewing and evaluating reading programs, and they'll select a few programs for the district to pilot, and we'll report on that at a future board meeting in terms of which programs those are. But we don't anticipate a budget impact on that for 26-27 because that decision won't be made until the next budget process.
So there aren't any initiatives currently going on in the district that have shown themselves not to have, for lack of a better word, a return on investment? There's no shift in anything that's already existing that administration has said this just isn't worth the money?
No, we are looking at the programs that we've currently adopted to make sure that they are meeting our needs, but that requires further study and discussion. So for example, as you know, we discussed during the elementary data presentation that each school has adopted a phonics program. There are 3 different phonics programs that are being used across the district. One of the goals that we set out at the beginning of the year was to determine if any one of the programs had greater success rates than the other, and if they did, then we would recommend a change, but that it's too soon to make a decision on that. Early data does not point to anything that is of concern in that area.
Okay, thank you. On page 20, you have the budget initiatives under consideration. Around this time last year, maybe in February, the board was given an outline of FTEs that might be added of up to 3. And if we didn't need all 3, we would then transition to maybe 2 FTEs. I'm just filling you in now on what we discussed. Maybe 2 FTEs and a guidance counselor at Weber. And then if we didn't need 2 FTEs, it would be 1 FTE, and then a middle school guidance counselor, and then the financial literacy course and so, at Schreiber. And so I'm just wondering, since we didn't get the Weber guidance counselor, and to my knowledge, the financial literacy course wasn't funded yet. Are those currently considerations? Are we resurrecting or carrying over anything from last year's budget discussion?
So with respect to staff, let me answer your question about staffing first. We will present on March 10th, we will present a detailed view of what our staffing recommendations look like, because by that date, we will have already reviewed the secondary FTE needs. We have a meeting set up in February to meet with the middle school administration to review their staffing needs, and then later in February, before the February break, with the high school administration to review the student request tallies. We have moved up the student request tallies this year so that that information can be a part of the budget process from the preliminary budget from the March 10th presentation. So on that date, we will be prepared to present to you what our recommendations are as they relate to elementary class size and as they relate to additional FTEs at the middle and high school level. The courses that I've outlined here are the new courses that were recommended by the building's curriculum committee for consideration this school year. There may have been courses that were recommended last school year that will still be offered to students, and if enrollment supports adding an FTE and the budget allows us to add an FTE, we will discuss that at that March meeting. But at this point, what we were highlighting were the new courses that were being recommended this year. It doesn't mean that a course that was offered last year that didn't receive sufficient enrollment or the budget couldn't accommodate might not also might not be considered in this budget. We'll give you a clearer picture of that next year. With respect to the Weber Guidance Counselor, there are no discussions going on at the moment about adding a guidance counselor at the middle school level. Those conversations have not continued.
Would that discussion originate in the middle school? Would it be something that the middle school administrator would bring forward during budget season and say, I need this, this is what I need, this is my wish list for what I have in my school? Is that where it would originate?
Yes, so far we've received staffing recommendations from the elementary schools. We have not yet received the staffing recommendations from the middle school and high school. What we'll do once we receive the staffing requests is we'll evaluate them and we'll determine what we would recommend in terms of what the budget can accommodate.
So I just have, I think, 2 more questions.
Can I just follow up on that? Sorry, I don't understand what changed between the 2 years. So if the discussion was made last year on that need by whomever, it wasn't a curriculum because it wasn't a thorough review of that department. So whatever initiative it was last year and whatever mechanism that it was brought up, what was the change between last year and our current state that those conversations ceased or that need is no longer? Because as far as enrollment and numbers of students in Weber, what we heard was the bubble grade was the 12th graders, right? So my assumption is that Weber numbers are still high of whatever those numbers are from last year. So how would the needs have changed between the 2 years if those enrollment numbers are still similar? And if anything, our mental health situation, I won't say crisis, but hasn't changed?
Yeah, so again, we haven't discussed the middle school staffing needs at this point. That discussion is coming up in February. What I will tell you, though, is preliminarily, there have not been discussions about adding a middle school guidance counselor at Weber. I don't know what has changed because I can't speak to what was discussed last school year, but I can find out for you what the context was of that. The only conversation that has surfaced as it relates to guidance counselors, of course, is the preschool level counselor. And the discussion that we've had at the administrative level is that we need more time for that. We need more time to assess the impact of that. And so we're not prepared to make a recommendation regarding that at this point.
Ms. Brooks, you can continue.
Just for the public meeting, the impact of having removed the preschool guidance counselor last year.
That's right.
And restructured the responsibilities. Okay. So now on the buses. So I'm all for trying to reduce carbon footprint and all that, but the zero emissions has me kind of feeling scratchy and itchy. And I wonder, the replacement of this 22-passenger bus, is that going to be with an electric vehicle? And I guess my question is, until we know, because we have to be fiscally responsible in addition to trying to preserve the environment for our children and our children's children, but are we, and I listened to the budget discussion, the budget committee, so I just want to make sure, and so I'll just say, I just want to make sure that when we're purchasing these new vehicles, we are doing the fiscally responsible thing, especially not knowing what the state is going to require of us, and that we are being mindful of the environment, but also trying to operate with the best fleet possible, one that we can maintain, one that's not going to break the bank, one that has infrastructure supporting it, so forth and so on. So I'll just kind of put my thought out there and not even ask the question. I'm just letting you know my thoughts again this year, because it's...
So if I could just share,
Sure.
That's a common question. I did discuss that with some of my colleagues in our quadrant who have much bigger fleets than we do. Because, I said to them, we just want to buy one bus, and it's a smaller bus, and it's going to be a diesel bus. they were saying, well, it's not until 2035 that you have to really have the electric in place. There will be waivers put in place as well. And they said, we can't not buy buses because if we don't, like for this bus, the one we're replacing is actually 22 years old. If that bus goes down, we'll have a route that we can't cover for our students. So even if in 10 years, we will have gotten the use out of that vehicle, and we will have saved a substantial amount of money transporting our students. The other vehicle that we're looking into is really kind of an SUV that can take 2 or 3 students on a private placement. So that's something that could save us over $200,000 a year. And that's a smaller vehicle. We're not sure we can actually do that. We're trying to look now to where can we source that from and what is a good vehicle. So to be continued with that.
Deb, can I just chime in? Are electric buses readily available for purchase at this time? Because the last time the board talked about this, they weren't even available if you wanted to buy one.
They are available. I don't know how you could actually charge them, though. You would have to have, there needs to be trenches dug to actually have the electric capability. And we have to work with PSEG. So we are doing that study with Wendell Engineers, and we'll be meeting with them in February, again, to see, they had conversations with PSEG about the load capabilities that they possess as well. So.
But I think to Jessica's point, and this came up at the budget meeting, there's long lead times on a bus. So even if you put a bus in your budget and you pay for it, you may not get it within that budget cycle, as some schools are seeing, right? Is that?
Yes, it depends. Yeah.
There was an article in I think the Times or the Journal this week, last week, about the fact that school districts have not been able to get these buses all around the country. And there's like 2 companies and they're not delivering. So I don't know.
What they are delivering is expensive.
Yeah. No, there's people who have paid and haven't gotten buses in 4 or 5 years is what the article said.
Yeah.
Yeah, all over the country.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Just one. So I know you're going to discuss the rollover budget at our next board meeting. I'm hoping that all of our discussions, we learned something a couple years ago where we discussed the rollover budget later on, and then we realized rollover budget did not allow us to do everything we had talked about the previous couple of board meetings, and I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that that's not going to be the case this time, that all these things that we want to do, we actually will be able to do, well, at least the majority of it, so.
So,
me something to hope for.
It depends on the revenue side of the budget. So you have a rollover budget, and if you do have initiatives or things we would like to do, it's really looking at our resources and how do we reallocate resources to do what's best for our students. So I am hopeful with the increase in the tax-based growth factor and also our state aid projection. Not as much as I would have liked it to have been, but we'll see what develops with that.
We're in good company because the majority of districts in Nassau County, I think, got kind of the same small little bump that we did. We're not outliers this time. Yeah.
It's important to remember that, you know, again, the framework for this whole discussion is that 73% of our budget, as it's situated right now, is related to staffing. So a lot of this is a question of resource allocation and resource prioritization. With the benefits portion of the budget showing the volatility that it shows and increasing at 9%, that will create significant pressure on the budget. You know, anytime, especially in a tax cap environment, anytime you have a major portion of your budget increasing that dramatically and that and showing that volatility, it's difficult in terms of it creates difficult pressure on the budget. Now, we had mentioned Ms. Manuel had mentioned that we do have several retirements, and while, of course, we hate to see the talent and the institutional knowledge leave our school district, it does relieve some pressure on the budget, the fact that we have 17 retirements, the fact that our tax-based growth factor will allow some more flexibility in terms of the tax cap because of new constructions and new homes being added to the tax base is also very, very helpful. But even with those positives, this will still be a very challenging budget to put together because any budget in a tax cap environment is challenging, is going to be a challenge to put together. So we'll have to make some difficult decisions about prioritization of all of these really good ideas and all of these and all of these competing priorities, which are all centered, of course, on service to our students. So I look forward to that conversation. At the next meeting, the budget will come into a little bit of a clearer focus because Ms. Manuel will present to you exactly what the rollover budget is and what the tax cap will allow, and then we'll be able to engage in discussions about the prioritization of resources within that budget.
Ms. Brooks, you're good?
Thank you, yes.
Okay. Ms. Epstein? Okay. Yeah, and I just want to reiterate and stress that Ms. Brooks, since you raised it and you referenced a couple of years ago when we had that snafu, as I stated at the beginning, these discussions are speculative only. It's really a wish list. And of course, once the rollover budget is calculated and we see what our income is, then obviously we know what of this wish list, which is just a preview of kind of what people are thinking about around the district. We'll find out what we can actually achieve and hopefully where we can find efficiencies to get what, get a little more out of it. Okay, so with that, thank you very much, Dr. Passi and Ms. Manuel, and we're gonna move on. Great. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for the following meetings: the January 6th BOE meeting, the January 8th 26th Policy and Personnel Committee meeting, and the January 12th 26th Budget and Facilities Committee meeting. Is there a second? Ms. Epstein? Yep. All in favor? 7-0. The minutes are approved. With that, we are going to move on to committee reports. I believe almost all of our committees have met since the last meeting, starting with Ms. Epstein for audit.
So audit hasn't met. We do have a scheduled meeting for next Wednesday where we are supposed to be discussing and meeting with our internal claims auditor at 9 a.m. It's always an exciting meeting and fast. And then we did have a robust conversation with budget and facilities, and where we did discuss revenue. And while we spent a lot of time discussing revenue, we also, in looking at our federal grants, we spent a lot of time discussing what type of advocacy work is needed. And so we went through a lengthy list of different advocacy points and narrowed it down for what would be most relevant to bring forth. And so the committee is making a recommendation to, as you recall, I think at reorganization, we selected 3 people to represent when needed and take forth. And of course, as a board, we can always decide how this works out, but we were looking at really making the recommendation to reach out, especially to our federal legislators, on the cuts to Title I and potential elimination and reduction to Titles II and III. Advocating against it, whether we have a letter for that, whether we want to speak to them, whether we want to do both, or we want to reach out to all of our constituents to support us. We also then said to talk about supporting for the IDEA and fully funding it. As we know, it has never been fully funded and just continues to get chopped at. I think now they're only funding 14% of it, and that is abysmal. And then last but not least, we add a initiative in there to support, to prioritize student health, wellness, and safety. And wow, in the governor's school run release and her state budget information,
She does also have, again, a large prioritization for student health, wellness, and safety. So we could definitely glom onto that. This is a recommendation we're bringing forth, and what we would like to know is, how shall we make this happen? Shall we utilize the members that were asked and appointed to some degree? Do you want us from the Budget Committee to provide you with this information and some numbers? What is the best way for us to proceed forward if we all agree that this is the direction we should proceed? And I would also just state that since the House and the Senate are meeting at the end of the month, and I know we might be in a government shutdown, so that's going to confuse things, that we act sooner rather than later on our advocacy issues from that federal standpoint, and also additionally in our state, but federal seems to be our priority right now.
Do you have a way you want to facilitate this conversation? Like, it's a two-part question. So should we ask first for agreement
Yes.
with the priorities?
Yes.
Is there anybody who disagrees with the priorities to make it simple? Okay, so that go to your second part of your question.
Okay. How would we like to proceed?
So during the Budget Committee meeting, you talked about providing all the information, the details, the format to empower Ms. Alvarez, Mr. Smith, and me. And so I always take that type of direction from Ms. Manuel anyway, because she's got the nuts and bolts and the facts, and then we can present it. I know you were talking about, do we go meet in person? Do we write letters? I think if we could even, first of all, I don't know that it would be great if we could meet with the congressman himself. Not being able to do that in the event we can't, because he may be in Washington, then with his aide. But I'm wondering about the timing, because the letter writing takes time, right? Then we have to come back to the board, and do we have to approve the letter in public? And that means now we're into February. So
I don't think we necessarily would. I don't think that's been our practice in the past, but in a rush, I don't think there's any like legal reason why we would have to do that if the board didn't think we needed to.
My personal feeling is that we meet personally. I have always thought that seeing a person and having board members come and go to the office, whether it's our state assembly person, state senator, our governor's liaison, we have all those people at, we have the governor's liaison, we have Long Island liaison, and I think that we should take advantage of that. And just as soon as we can, as soon as we can set up a meeting, as soon as we can get the details, that's my perspective.
So will you guys, the three of you, work to set up this meeting then? Okay.
We'll get it done.
And what do you need from us? We can, Dr. Posse provided us recently, and Kathy has provided us with information. Can the Budget Committee help synthesize or provide more to you than what you have already?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
And the other thing is, though, I just want to be clear, we will be meeting with our congressperson. Are we meeting with a representative from the governor's office? Are we meeting with our state
I think
electeds?
we're focusing on federal for this, was the plan to start with.
Because, prioritize student health, wellness, and safety would be more on this state
But
level.
I think the emergency is to try to, the governor's already, we know when she puts out her budget, it's kind of,
Okay.
there's nothing, so I think where we might be able to, and not that we're not gonna move anything anyway, but we can try meeting with our federal
So the
representative.
first thing is to meet with federal representatives.
Yes.
That's what I'm
I would
hearing.
recommend that.
Okay.
That's the recommendation.
Okay, and I just wanted to understand
Yeah,
very clearly, okay, where we're going.
okay. Awesome, thank you.
Can I ask? So first step is federal. That's the urgent one that the three of us will discuss and work out. The other items, while not urgent, are still listed. So, and we just as a board said that we are in agreement that they are fine to move forward with. So especially two of them could just be letters. So the three of us, Ms. Brooks, Mr. Adams, are going to work on that. Mr. Smith.
You can call me Dr. Adam.
Oh, my God. It's just too many people. We are going to work on that as well. Why delay that? Could we just work on that as well?
Well, I thought it was going to be definitely number one and number two, because IDA is federal, and
So we could just, I didn't hear the idea, I didn't hear you say that one, so, just, because I thought you said the priority one of the first one, so.
Well, it is just from a timing standpoint, and
Yeah.
I think we'll do all the recommendations, but I think Ms. Brooks was trying to understand, like, what we have to focus on right now is to try to set up the meetings with the federal representatives, and then we only have so much collective bandwidth. We can move on to but I think we should address all three of these. It's just the number 1 and 2 are really federal, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So the other thing then is, will Ms. Manuel and Dr. Posse be joining us? Just so we know who to coordinate in the meeting.
If you want them.
I think we can make that determination.
Okay? And then another question just went out of my head.
I think we got this, Ms. Brooks. I think
When it comes back to me, I'll say it.
okay. Thank you.
Sorry. There have been action letters sent out by the National School Boards Association, by the New York State, so forth and so on. Would it be worthwhile in the meantime to maybe populate some inboxes with those letters? Because this is the Title I thing is a national thing that's going to be felt in many different places, maybe through the Parents' Council, or is there anything we can do to get that ball rolling before we get to the meeting?
We certainly can, and we did discuss it, but a lot of those letters are already written. Dr. Posse has provided us one from NISCUS. We referenced the ones from Nassau School Boards Association, and we can easily just send the link out if that's something we want to do to act even faster. We did not want to step on toes or make any assumptions, so.
But I think we could provide that to Parents' Council. If they want to send it out, that's their prerogative. It's not something we could certainly impose or even ask them to do, but I think we can provide.
Does
the
everybody
link.
here agree with that? I think. Okay.
That's really good. I think that's something you would do directly. It's not really the board action.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we know that's going to happen sometime soon?
I think it's up to the three of us to work on
No,
this.
the letter, the letter that Dr. Posse could send out or reinforce. Did it already go?
Can I give a recommendation? Can the next step just be that the three of us meet
That's
and
what we're trying
as
to
an
do.
update via email to the rest of the board? Do we have the blessing of the board that we know these three main priorities
Yes.
are as we would like, create any letters and set up any meetings as it pertains to these three specific initiatives?
Yes, I was simply saying that there are already form letters that are circulating nationally, and that's all I was saying.
So our work cut in half is what I heard, and we already have the blessing, so we can just.
Let's set up a meeting, let's get
Yeah.
the talking points from Ms. Manuel, and, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
I just want to add, and I mentioned this during the Budget and Facilities Committee meeting as well, letters and meetings are not mutually exclusive, and I do think it would be really helpful for us to be simultaneously working on both, just simply because time is of the essence. So the likelihood that our congressman is going to be able to fit us into his schedule before this vote happens, I don't know where I'm putting the odds on that, but the odds of getting a letter out are probably significantly better. So I would personally favor pursuing both in parallel.
No, I think we will, and I think when we do the outreach, that's what we had said earlier, is like, I think a letter is gonna be the kickoff, and that's, I don't think we need to necessarily bring it back in public or anything, like, we'll slightly tweak one of the public letters that we three agree on, send it out, and we'll follow up with trying to set up a meeting. I think that would
Great.
be the plan.
Great.
Yeah, okay, awesome. So, curriculum, Ms. Melkonian.
Thank you. We had another wonderful discussion this past Friday on acceleration and enrichment from K to 12. It is on the website for those that weren't able to attend, so please make yourself available of that if you have interest. The next meeting will be Friday, February 13th at 10 a.m., and we will be discussing the climate survey results.
Thank you, Ms. Melkonian. Ms. Brooks, you're back to the
Okay,
microphone.
so Policy and Personnel met last week, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and we're chugging away on the grading policy. It's on board docs if anybody wants to see what it looks like in the draft form. We also talked about student attendance. We talked about the Bogart Scholarship, and I think there was one more, student records, I can't. Anyway, so that work will continue after break. It's currently scheduled for after break, February 27th at 10 a.m. in the annex.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. With that, we're going to move on to our consent agenda. Before I read the donations, does anybody have anything they wanted to pull? Okay. Before I call for the vote, I want to point out, number one, that on for approval tonight is the 26-27 school calendar. I know that's something that the community is always asking about. So if anyone is listening, please make sure to tell your friends that we'll get that posted, and Shannon will push that out tomorrow, right? So everyone can look ahead and plan, et cetera. We additionally have in here next year's BOE meeting dates that everyone should also put in your calendar. Yeah. Exactly. And I want to note that we switched BOE meetings next school year are going to be on Thursdays for numerous reasons. That was just a request from largely the administration that Tuesdays were kind of tough to have these meetings on Tuesdays. But I will note that opens up everybody's Tuesdays to attend the North Hempstead Town Council meetings, which are often on the same day.
Those are also equally fun.
Yes. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve items 12.1 through 18.1. Is there a second? Ms. Brooks, all in favor? 7-0. Great. Did I read the donations already? No, I didn't. So we would like to thank the following for their donations: Glory Steinberg for 2 bows for the Weber Middle School, Salem HSA for the 4th grade Sound Waters program, Sousa HSA for the electricity workshop, the Kirpin Foundation for the 5th grade Learners Club, and Renew Contracting and Restoration for being our robotics sponsor. Okay. We're going to move on to old business. Okay. So we had a multi-part community comment last week, or our last meeting, specifically relating to certain services and I guess legal expenditures relating to them. So I'll kind of go through these questions one by one. I'm not going to read them in their entirety. The first question was relating to what was the total expenditure incurred by the district between 2015 and 2025 regarding literacy-related legal fees. According to district records, which were, and I do want to state also that all of this was treated as a FOIL request, and all of that information was run through the FOIL process and sent to the community member, but I will read some of it out here. So what was dug up shows that there was only one legal proceeding related to, I can't go any further into the details on it, but there was only one legal hearing in that 10-year period relating to literacy specifically. Next is how much is specifically earmarked in the 25-26 budget for Orton, Gilligan, or similar science of reading certifications. We have nothing specifically earmarked for that. However, we do have monies budgeted in the amount of $18,850. That's $18,850 for training aligned with the science of reading. So we don't have anything earmarked for OG, but there's about $20,000 allocated for science of reading. Question 2 was relating to understanding this. This is kind of related to question 1, but specifically related to understanding the long-term fiscal impact of contested literacy cases, and there really isn't one because we only had the one case in 2019, and that was really for a very specific purpose. Last question is, will the board commit to shifting from legal and administrative line items into professional development to prevent future litigation through improved instruction? So I want to just say that as part of our commitment to responding to questions raised at prior meetings, we did want to try to address these questions as best we could, but with respect to that final question, Regarding the board's commitment to shifting funds from legal services to professional development, it is both the philosophy and practice of the board and administration to prioritize instruction and professional development for all students across the district while balancing legal obligations with which we must comply. But I want to be clear that we do not carry a budget line item for legal expenses with the thought process of denying students their best academic program that would be available for them. It's just not something that would ever be thought about. So there really is no way to shift from funds from legal and administrative into professional development. It's just not a concept that really applies. So with that, I'm going to move to new business.
I just have a clarifying question on old business on that topic.
Sure.
For Dr. Allen. As it pertains to Orton Gillingham and allocated budget funds for that program, can you just clarify what we as a board meant when we said that no funds are directly earmarked for that program? Are we directly funding any program when it comes to literacy for our special education students or any students in AIS? You know, just, I think that needs just a clarification that I just misunderstood the comment also. Yes, please, sorry. I know that we are looking at a new literacy program, but this is.
But I want to be clear, Ms. Alvarez, and then is that the question that we understood it asked about specifically for professional development for that program, not expenditure in general on that program. So the answer that was given is whether or not there was funding allocated for professional development for OG specifically, and that's the answer that there's not, but there was almost 20,000 allocated for science of reading. So I want
For
to
professional development, okay.
Correct. So I want to clarify specifically
Got
that
it.
was the question.
So I misheard then I didn't, well, we didn't reread the full part of it, so maybe I didn't catch the professional development part.
It was a long question.
Should I bring this up in new business then? Because I still have the same question. Or leave it in old business?
She's going to answer the question now, but I want to just be clear that that was the question.
Thanks. OG is a methodology, so we look at different methodologies. We work with our staff to see what is out there and what will address the needs of our students globally, right? So the last few years, in addition to the work that Dr. Feeney has done for teachers, the general education staff, I've done some training on different reading programs that, in collaboration with the teachers, have brought in. Read 180 specifically is a program, Spire Reading, which is actually based on OG. And we have had some teachers in the past, but we find that the Spire Reading program seems to be a better program, and it's addressing more students' needs. We have another intervention program through Wonders, which is a reading program used in some of our buildings, and it's Wonder Works is the intervention component, so we've done workshops and training for staff on, the special education staff specifically on those.
Thank you. And I guess then part of the question would be is, as we look at the literacy program, and for my understand, for the potential new literacy program, universal literacy program, not new, is when we did the math, when it was looked at, reviewed, special education staff were on that committee as far as the review went for choosing a final math program. Is that safe to say for the makeup of this current committee for literacy, there is special education staff on it?
Dr. Feeney is nodding his head, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. And spoiler alert, she was prepared to answer that question. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to open up to our next opportunity for the community to be heard. We didn't see anybody sign in. I do, as always, want to give folks the opportunity. So go ahead. If you don't mind, just state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Kara Miller, and I had a variety of things prepared, but I was anticipating the response from you based on my comments from last week. I'm really happy to hear that it sounds like there is a big emphasis on improving our literacy programs and trainings in the science of reading for our general academic populations. I do want to dive a little deeper into those students with dyslexia and kind of highlight the difference between a general academic intervention, such as the tier instructions, versus an individualized instruction for a student with a diagnosis and a classification on an IEP. And I do want to, I'm going to pull up my notes here, because I did look into this 2019 legal filing that was related to Orton Gillingham services for a child with dyslexia, and it's public record, so I don't need to go into the details of all of that. But while it went to an impartial hearing officer, they determined that the student was entitled to the Orton Gillingham services. What I want to highlight here is, even though the student was found by an impartial hearing officer that they were legally entitled to these services, the district then chose to use taxpayer resources to file an appeal against this case. And during that appeal, the SRO denied the appeal based on the findings that the district had violated FAPE in 4 different areas. And one of my questions here tonight is, I don't want to necessarily dwell on the case and dissect it, but I'm curious what the district has done since then to ensure those specific type of violations are no longer being used to deny children services that they are legally entitled to. And again, Orton Gillingham is scientifically proven to be the best approach for children with dyslexia. And so and I know we do have certain teachers on staff that are Orton Gillingham certified, they're Wilson certified. They do meet these multi-sensory approaches that are typically put on IEPs for students with dyslexia. But I'm also curious as to what is being done to ensure that those teachers with those certifications, when they're working with our dyslexic students, are implementing those programs with fidelity instead of kind of a patchwork, whatever approach they see fit in that moment. Because specifically children with dyslexia need a very structured approach to learning literacy. Again, I know that I'm getting more into the dyslexia aspect, and I do appreciate that we're having this conversation about the science of reading, and I think generally providing more teacher trainings and our curriculum based in the science of reading is going to help a lot of struggling readers, but I don't want those with dyslexia to get lost as well. So I would also like to ask that we consider having an Orton Gillingham trained staff for those learners who have a dyslexia diagnosis that need something more of a formal outline to meet their individualized instruction based on their classifications. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Are there any additional speakers tonight? No. No? Okay, so Mrs. Miller, your questions are, I think, a little bit beyond the depth of what the board would be able to answer in public at a future meeting, but we'll make sure that the administrators are available to speak to you and they can answer any of those questions that I think are beyond the depth of the board's involvement. So,
thank you.
And if you don't get satisfaction, we would invite you back to the podium to ask again. Thank you so much.
Are you sure you want that? I'm not sure we do.
Okay. Okay. We don't need to recess to executive session. Do we have, I guess we're going to new business. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. We'll see you at our next meeting on February 10th at 6:30. Do I have a second? Ms. Brooks, all in favor? 7-0, we are adjourned. And that's 6:30 for starting public session, resuming at 7:30 from executive. Thank you.